Hello everyone, we're doing Pirkei Avot. We're on the second parak, the first Mishnah. We're actually going to stay on the first Mishnah, even though we covered some of it previously. There's a lot to say here, so I just want to spend a bit more time on it. We might need a third session. So it begins like this. So and this is obviously the way the entire first parak begins. Rabbi Omer, right? Rabbi Huda Nasi Omer. Ezohi Derech sheyavar lo ha'adam. What is the straight path that a person should choose? That's what we spoke about in our first session. And you should be careful with a light mitzvah as with a stringent one, because you don't know the reward for mitzvahs. Okay? And you should calculate the loss sustained in performing a mitzvah against the gain received in performing it, right? And the reward of, or the enjoyment, the gain derived from transgressing an avera against the benefit that you get for doing so. And lastly, look at three things and you will not come to perform an avera. Know what is above you. A seeing eye, a hearing ear, and all of your actions are written in the book. So we will not be able to cover all of this, but we'll cover hopefully at least a couple of these points. And just as a quick, interesting first point, this Mishnah when it says "Dama lemala mimcha," know what is above you. Reb Chaim Volozhiner in his Nefesh haChaim makes a really interesting comment, and he says like this: our spiritual selves need to be accounted for. Let's say there will be an accounting, a din v'cheshbon, once we pass away and go up to Shemaim. And it's important to know, where does that come from? Who determines that? Says the Nefesh haChaim, it's right here. Dama lemala mimcha. Know that which when we present ourselves to God and we show the mitzvahs we've performed, the averas we've transgressed, the Torah that we've learned, everything that we have become, that we've manifested in this world, and that we now are experiencing in Olam Haba, mimcha, that's from you. That is to say, from us. We're the ones responsible. Da lemala, know that which is above, mimcha, that's from you. That's an interesting first thought. But going back to the Maharal asks a great kasha here in his Derech haChaim. He says, how can the Mishnah say this? What does he mean? He says, we know that the Torah in fact does seem to prioritize mitzvahs. Specifically, he says, look at a met mitzvah. A met mitzvah is the mitzvah to bury a deceased person, and that becomes especially incumbent upon someone when they literally stumble upon a dead body. You have to bury it. I believe this is true for Jews. If a person sees a dead Jewish body, then they're obligated to bury it, and that pushes off other positive mitzvahs. Even, says the Maharal, the mitzvahs of Brit Milah and Pesach, the Korban Pesach. Now that's a big chiddush, says the Maharal. And he doesn't say this, but the reason why is because it's important to understand, I guess, like the tier of reward, or in this case, punishment for specific mitzvahs or averas. Namely, for averas, there's a ladder of severity of punishment. The worst is obviously mita, it's death. There are four different subcategories of death that each have their own level of severity. Right, skila is the most serious, sreifa is the next most serious, etc. But mita as a category is the most serious. What's the second most serious? It's called karet, cutting off. The general idea here is you're cut off from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the relationship is severed. And examples of averas that invoke such a punishment are eating chametz on Pesach and eating on Yom Kippur. And generally, as a general principle, karet is only kicks in with negative mitzvahs. That is to say, do not eat on Yom Kippur. If you eat on Yom Kippur, then you suffer karet. Right? Do not eat chametz on Pesach. If you eat chametz on Pesach, then karet. And there are two exceptions to this principle, and that is 2 positive mitzvahs have the punishment of karet for failing to perform the mitzvah. That's extremely unusual. Again, there are 248 positive mitzvahs, and only 2 of them receive this punishment, as opposed to 365 negative mitzvahs, and there are 36 that receive karet, 2 of which are the positive mitzvahs, which are the Korban Pesach and Brit Milah. That's amazing. That first it clearly indicates that there's this particular connection we form to Kadosh Baruch Hu, that the failure of which to perform it severs us from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But says the Maharal, a met mitzvah, right, is not punishable by karet if we fail to perform it, and yet it pushes off Brit Milah and Pesach. That's a huge chiddush. And yet, says the Maharal, we see that met mitzvah seems to trump these other mitzvahs. So how can our Mishnah say you should be as careful with a mitzvah kal kevachamura she'enat yodem matan scharan shel mitzvot? Says the Maharal, that's incorrect, because the underlying assumption we're making with this kasha that the Maharal asked is that we're thinking if mitzvah A pushes off mitzvah B, that means that mitzvah A is more valuable, gets more schar than mitzvah B. Says the Maharal, that's incorrect. That's not the way we're to understand it. Just because mitzvah A pushes off mitzvah B does not mean it receives more schar. And what's interesting is he shows this in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, b'mitzvah kala kevachamura, with a light or lenient mitzvah is with a stringent mitzvah. It's just telling us that with regards to schar, right, to reward, there are certain mitzvahs that receive more reward than others. The reward for Brit Milah may very well be greater than the mitzvah for performing met mitzvah. The condition is you're not allowed to perform a Brit Milah if you have a met mitzvah in front of you. If you do that, then you lose the reward for Brit Milah, and you've in fact transgressed the affair of not performing the met mitzvah. It's just saying there's a certain order of priority, but that doesn't necessarily correspond to actual schar. And I'll give an analogy that I think serves as a good example to both of his answers. That's answer 1 to this kasha by the Maharal. The second answer he gives is also very interesting. It says like this, and this is also quoted by Rashi. I believe it's a midrash, and it says like this: imagine the king has a pardes. The king has an orchard, however you want to translate pardes. And if he tells the workers, "Okay, I want you to go fix up the field," and then he says, "These trees, fixing these trees will earn you much more reward than fixing the other trees," what's going to happen? Everyone's going to focus on the trees that give them maximal reward. And then what is going to be the result? The result is the pardes is going to look it's going to look very unseemly. There's going to be some areas that are very beautiful and others that are kind of grungy looking. They're not fixed up properly. So you can't tell the workers which ones are going to give them more reward. You just have to let them go and do the work. Once they do the work, the pardes will be beautified. And that's an amazing lesson. So what are we supposed to understand from this mashal, from this example, from this analogy? The answer is, imagine a case like this, right? You're an investment banker, and you go to the office. Everything's dirty. It's all dusty and disgusting, and the internet is not working, and the elevators aren't functioning. You can't get your job done, right? You need to hire a janitor, the person who's going to install the internet software and the hardware, and make sure that everything's functioning properly. That doesn't mean that the janitor gets paid as much as the investment banker, right? But that means that each person has his role. Each mitzvah has its role. Or a person, when they work out, how does this work? If a person's like, I know that people really like really big biceps, so I'm going to work on big biceps, and then they completely neglect the rest of their body, like say their forearms. You have these huge biceps and these tiny little twigs for forearms. It just looks unseemly. It's like, yes, it's true. People like biceps more, but in general, as a whole, we like to see a whole complete body, a whole complete form, right? When a person goes into the office, they want to see everything clean. When a person goes into a field or a person's lawn, they want to see everything manicured well. You can't have one area that's gorgeous, these beautiful flowers, with disgusting weeds growing at the foot. It's like, but don't you like the flowers? Aren't the flowers pretty? It's like, yeah, but those weeds ruin everything. Fix that up. So that's the idea here. In terms of, it's true, there are some mitzvahs that derive more schar than others. But that doesn't mean, A, that the one with more schar pushes off the ones with less schar. That's one. And 2, we can understand why. Why not? Because there's a pardes, and it needs to be fixed up. And for us to focus in on some mitzvahs more than others is going to leave this this lack of shlemut, this lack of completion of beautifying the whole, so that there's a sense of unity, and that's the issue here. That's what we're seeing in this first, or I guess in this second bava of the Mishnah, and we'll see the rest of it and hopefully complete this Mishnah next time. And until then, Shabbat Shalom, enjoy Parshat Noach, and we'll see you soon.